Perhaps I haven't done a book review thingy-majig for ages, and probably not a bad thing. The internet hasn't exactly been beaten a path to my door to do more, but last week was the 80th anniversary of the Bismarck, the battleship Bismarck, from its breakout to sinking HMS Hood to its own sinking a couple of days later, and I was reaching for a couple of books. And one I hadn't read before until the weekend just gone, and I know the image is flipped, is Battleship Bismarck by the most senior officer to survive the sinking. And I have to look at it because it's a mouth, it's a bulky name, Baron Burkhard von Mullenheim-Rechberg. And I first became aware of the Baron when I was little, reading my dad's, which is now my copy, of Robert Ballard's Bismarck book, because when they found the wreck in 1989, there were still survivors, and this chap here is the Baron, who, I was reading last week, became a successful diplomat after World War II, albeit with West Germany, and he died in 2003 after a grand old life. Battleship Bismarck, if you're interested at all in this episode of the Royal Navy and World War II, it's an incredibly interesting book because the Baron actually could speak English rather well. He visited Britain, I believe, in the mid-1930s a couple of times, and was no Nazi. He was slightly shocked, you might say, by the way things were going. But he took to his duties. He had a long career in the Navy prior to World War II. And being the officer that he was there at the heart of things, at least until when Bismarck left for the Atlantic, because he was briefly Captain Ernst Lindemann's adjutant until the Bismarck was ready to go to sea. And then thereafter, at the rear of the ship, really, in the aft control for the guns. And I'd say, probably from what I've read in this book, the best source of what was going on the Bismarck. You know, like I say, I mean, when I was little, when I was about 6 or 7, I became first aware of these things, and with my dad's books and watching the film Sink the Bismarck, and reading books last week, I just struck by everything. It ultimately was about the camaraderie of sailors at sea. No more than 115 German sailors survived the sinking of the Bismarck. Many more probably could have survived had there not been a U-boat alarm when the British ships, the Maori and the Dorsetshire, had gone in to rescue survivors. A few hundred had gone into the water, very similar to Titanic in that regard. The only difference, as I say, is that they received an alert that there could be a U-boat in the area, so the British ships got the hell out of it. It's a fascinating episode in that the British had great admiration, really, for how the Germans, you know, behaved, I suppose. You know, there was an element of revenge when they were pounding the Bismarck to scrap metal, get even for the Hood. But they pulled these sailors out of the water, and they were scared young men, covered in oil and that. Some of them were probably Nazis, but, you know, to the British sailors there was an element of, well, it could be me, I suppose. And also it was an episode of incredible bravery, especially the Swordfish pilots. Not a single pilot or plane was lost, despite the film depiction. And indeed, that brings us on to the next book, C.S. Forester's The Hunting of the Bismarck, which I'm pretty sure has been known as the last 9 days of the Bismarck and a few other things. This was the basis of the film Sink the Bismarck, and look how bloody thin it is. Now, it's a curious book if you're familiar with the film. In the film, you've got dear old Kenneth Moore playing Commander Shepard, the new head of operations at the Admiralty. You've got Dana Winter as a Wren, who's lost her fiance at Dunkirk the previous year. You've got Bernard Lee's assistant chief to the Navy, ACNS. You've got Lawrence Naismith as Pound, the First Lord of the Admiralty. And then on the Bismarck, you've got Lindemann Lütjens depicted. The actors' names always get muddled in my head, but that's not immaterial right now. And then you've got other actors. You've got the great Michael Hordern playing Admiral Kenneth Tovey, who had his flag above HMS King George V. But this is a semi-fictional account, and it reads, you know, if you focus on it, you could probably read this in half an hour. It's the kind of thing that is a literal page turner, because it reads as if in real time, albeit, you know, for a few days. And there's no characters as such. Lütjens and Lindemann are mentioned, but they're the only ones really to have a name. And there's a Nobby on HMS Hood who goes down with the 1,400 or so other crew members. It's a good read, but as I say, it's semi-fictional. So if you're looking for a book that is more detailed factually, then, you know, you'd go for the Baron's Battleship Bismarck. And then the third book is The Discovery of the Bismarck by Robert Ballard. And it's got some great illustrations, including some paintings by Ken Marshall, who did Titanic illustrations for Ballard's books on that. And it's a great piece as a time capsule, you might say. I mean, there is another book about the discovery, for the discovery of the Hood and the Bismarck around about 2004, but seek out if you want to, but to me, those are the books to look for if you want something for the Bismarck. So thank you for watching, listening, or whatever, and well, as Dave Allen used to say, whatever God you believe in, go with you.